environmental, conservation and other objectives. This year we will improve or remove regulations that prevent natural resources being used more productively or not being used at all. In particular, the government will progress an action plan to ensure more is made of New Zealand's petroleum resources. This, Mr Speaker, is because while oil is already New Zealand's third largest export earner, estimates are that with improved government policies, the petroleum sector could generate up to $30 billion in export revenues by 2025. Mr Speaker, we will also take steps to maximise the economic potential of the minerals currently locked up in government-owned land. Mining in New Zealand uses just 40 square kilometres of land, around 1/100th of 1% of our total land area. The export value of that land, however, is $175,000 per hectare, which makes mining an extremely valuable use of land. Mr Speaker, the government will shortly release a discussion document recommending that some areas of Crown land be removed from Schedule 4 of the Crown Minerals Act. We'll be calling for submissions on this document. But, Mr Speaker, the government is eager to unleash the increased economic growth and new jobs that could be produced from our mineral estate. So we expect to make some changes to Schedule 4, thereby opening up more government-owned land to mining. I can assure New Zealanders that any new mines will have to meet strict environmental tests. Moreover, the government is proposing to establish a new conservation fund, potentially drawn from royalty revenue on mining operations on Crown land. Finally, Mr Speaker, the government will this year take steps to ensure New Zealand can make more of our abundant supplies of water. We will ensure that water storage and irrigation projects which meet environmental standards and which are good economic propositions can happen in a decent timeframe. This will include a particular focus on removing regulatory roadblocks to water storage, and irrigation can begin in Canterbury, Mr Speaker. The government will this year undertake substantive reforms to improve the access New Zealand businesses have to capital investment. Our businesses simply cannot expand or take on new workers unless they can access the funding they need to grow. The challenge of accessing capital has increased since the global economic and financial crisis. Investor uncertainty has been high and a number of people lost money in investments they were poorly advised on or knew little about. We want New Zealanders from all walks of life to be able to invest their savings in productive businesses, either directly or through funds, with more confidence in the regulation of those capital markets and with the knowledge they need to make informed choices. To this end, the government has been considering the report of the Capital Markets Development Task Force. We will respond to its recommendations shortly. Our response will outline significant policy changes across government, including changes to the Securities Act. We are intrigued by the opportunity for New Zealand to become a hub for financial services in the Asia-Pacific region, specialising in providing high-value middle and back-office functions for the funds management industry. The government if this is of similar new industries could be developed here, and we have asked officials to determine what steps we should take to make this initiative a reality. Mr Speaker, the reforms I've just outlined demonstrate how ambitious this government is for growth of the New Zealand economy and how bold we're going to be in the pursuit of that ambition. However, these are just some of the highlights of our economic plan for 2010. This will also be the year in which the Auckland Super City becomes a reality, a year in which more free trade agreements are signed, a year in which we start laying out the first of our ultra-fast broadband initiative, a year where new highways will be built to relieve chronic bottlenecks, a year in which we will encourage our tourism industry to thrive. For now, though, let me turn to the government's other key priority for the year, which is to make significant social sector reforms, starting with our education system. Central to this reform effort will be the implementation of national standards policy in years 1 to 8 in schools. Backed, I might say, Mr Speaker, by 73% of New Zealand parents, and rightfully so. Mr. Speaker, this will be backed up with changes to ensure taxpayers' funds are being used effectively for the children's schools that need extra support. This will include policies to improve the take-up of preschool education by children in our poor communities and in Maori and Pacific populations. It will include moves to improve the training of our teachers, to make more of funding intended for struggling students, and to provide for more aggressive intervention in schools that are consistently failing their students. We will also step up our push to ensure secondary-age pupils have greater opportunities to learn trades and practical skills in our schools and tertiary educations. This will include furthering our youth guarantee policy and supporting it with reforms to modernise the funding and legislative arrangements governing our secondary schools. Mr. Speaker, the Government will this year introduce legislation to reform the benefit system consistent with our election policies. In 2010, New Zealand taxpayers will fund an estimated $7.6 billion of benefits and income support, not including superannuation. This amounts to more than $20 million every day, just under $1 million every hour. Mr. Speaker, I need to be able to look New Zealand taxpayers in the eye and assure them that their hard-earned wages are not being used to support those who lack the will or the desire to work as hard for their living as their fellow New Zealanders do. Mr. Speaker, our benefit reform package will therefore be squarely focused on encouraging people to get back to work as soon as possible. It will include adjustments to the criteria and testing for sickness benefits. It will include strict application rules to prevent people languishing on the unemployment benefit, and it will increase work and training expectations for those who are currently receiving the domestic purposes benefit when their youngest child turns 6. These changes will be supported by adjustments to the benefit abatement regime. The welfare reforms will have, Mr. Speaker, a very positive impact and effect not just for the beneficiaries themselves, but more importantly for the sustainability of the welfare system. If, for example, just 100 DPP recipients were to move off their benefit and into work, the welfare system would save close to $10 million over their lifetime. If we were to assist 5% of sole parents whose youngest child is aged over 6 years into work, we would save almost $200 million over the next 10 years. Mr. Speaker, this year will also be a year where we'll be tackling issues when it comes to law and order. We will have a comprehensive program that followed on from the enormous work effort in 2009. Stronger punishments for the worst offenders, reform of the legal aid system, reform to liquor licensing rules, new youth justice programs, extension and progress on our P Action Plan, intensifying proactive policing policies and improving our prisons. So too in the health sector, Mr. Speaker, highlights for 2010 will be new legislation to stop the duplication and waste, progress on the elective surgery and a new push for better performing primary health care. Mr. Speaker, and in concluding this statement to the House, I want to acknowledge the ongoing collaboration and support of our confidence and supply partners, the ACT, Maori and United Future parties. We look forward to another year in which we work constructively with them to provide stable and inclusive government. Mr. Speaker, let me wrap up by saying this. 2009 was not an easy year for many people. Some people lost their jobs, some their savings, and others their confidence. Yet things are undoubtedly looking up. The economy is picking up, and new jobs will appear as businesses have their confidence. The policies we intend to introduce this year will be a big part of this country's improvement. The government's overriding concern is to improve opportunities, fairness and security for all New Zealanders. Mr. Speaker, as this statement has shown, we have an active and comprehensive program ahead of us in 2010 in almost every economic and social area. And as a result, Mr. Speaker, New Zealand will be a better place to live. Mr. Speaker, today I presented to Parliament a statement of 9,500 words which has a work program for this country to make a step change. A few weeks ago, Phil Goff's idea was cap the wages of the 16 bureaucrats in New Zealand. No wonder they were in opposition, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Order.